Well, the good news is there are some frontier-type folks who are taking risks to change the paradigm. There's a young couple that comes to mind who lived down in Florida. They had fallen on hard times, needed some help from some of the churches, got some food and other things donated, and realized in that process that it was a very demeaning thing to be the recipient of that kind of charity. And they vowed that if they got out of that situation, they'd do something about it, and they did. They set up a program called United Against Poverty. They started collecting food and writing proposals, and instead of doing a food pantry, they set up a food store. They got donated food and also other household items, and put a price tag of 30% of retail on that. 30 cents on a dollar is what they sold that food for. And then they qualified members, means tested, so it's folks that had real need, and then used that 30 cents on the dollar to set up a set of programs that would help members take measured steps to move out of poverty. And so the support mechanisms to help folk escape poverty were being paid for by the very folks that were paying for their groceries in the store. Brilliant concept. And it works so well in their small town that they have taken it now to 2 other cities, including Orlando, Florida, and have 3 rather large grocery stores that are providing affordable food for those in need and providing the way out of poverty at the same time. That's a whole new paradigm. That's a whole different way of coming at poverty alleviation. Those are reciprocal kinds of relationships. It's changing the way our shelters have been working. You know, there's the Union Mission, there's Association of Gospel Rescue Mission. That organization's been around for 150 years. And they have a theology that says God's grace is free, therefore our love for our guests needs to be free as well. And so they have never charged for a bed or for a meal or for any service that they have provided. It was bedrock theology. Some of their more innovative thinkers have said, you know, maybe it's a good thing to recognize the potential of our guests. And maybe it's a good thing to invite them into reciprocal relationships. And so there's the Holland, Michigan rescue mission. I've had a good history in that city, a facility that'll handle 500 guests a night. They decided to make a paradigm shift. Instead of devaluing their guests by saying, in essence, you have nothing of value which we desire in return, they're saying, we're looking at your capacity, your ability, and they've changed their whole way of evaluating success. Instead of counting the number of guests, the number of beds that are full, the number of meals that they have provided, they have reestablished their success criteria, which now has to do, is our graduate drug-free? Is he or her living independently? Is he paying off bad debts or bad fines? Is he being reconciled with his family? Is he a part of a church or a support group? Is he gainfully employed? Those are the indices by which you measure capacity development. And their numbers have been dramatically reduced. They can only work with 100 or so folks at a time, instead of the 500 that their building has capacity for. Instead of doing feeding folks free meals, they've said our guests have some culinary abilities. And they discovered that there was a whole group of their guests that had some experience in that area. And so they said, why don't we get our guests to fix the meals for our other guests? And discovered that the quality of that food was very, very good. And so decided to start a catering business. And so they provide a catering service of high-quality meals to the downtown business community, folks that formerly we were viewed as people that had very little to contribute here in the mission. That whole industry is beginning to shift. That says, now wait a second, folks have money, they've got talent. Why don't we enter into some reciprocal relationships together where those talents can be developed? It's a whole new day. And so when a ministry says, well, we're going to get out of the old paradigm, it's going to raise some eyebrows. Certainly as it did for us when we had a giveaway program. I told those of you who were here last year, I told you about it. We called it our Adopt a Family for Christmas. And so we give the caring people the names of children that were not going to get anything for Christmas. They'd go shopping and then deliver those toys to the homes of children in our community on Christmas Eve. And it was a lot of excitement, as you can imagine. Well, when we moved into that neighborhood and became neighbors among the recipient families, we saw something that we had just not seen before. We had time to be in the homes of some of the recipient families when the gift-bearing families arrived. And that's when I saw something that was very disturbing. The kids, of course, were all excited. Moms were gracious, but a little reserved, maybe a little embarrassed. But if there was a dad in the household, he just disappeared. He was gone out the back door. I'd never seen that before. The moms would endure that indignity for the sake of the kids, but it was more than a father's sense of dignity could handle. It was as though his impotence was being exposed in front of his wife and kids in his own living room. It was killing him. Never saw that before. Very, very toxic. And I was celebrating our Adopt a Family program. Oh, we said we have to change that. And so the following year, when folks called in to get their adopted family, I asked them to give another gift this year. Would you give the gift of dignity to the dads? And here's how you do it. Go shopping, buy the toys, don't wrap them, bring them down, and we're going to set up a little storefront. And we'll call it the Old Toy Shop. And we'll put somewhere between a garage sale and a wholesale price on those toys. And we'll invite parents to come in and go shopping. And if they don't have any money, well, we've got cash flow now. We can hire them, put them to work in the store so that everybody can buy toys for their kids. And what we do with the proceeds of that, well, we set up an employment training program that would employ unemployed parents, train in some retail merchandising skills, and move them out into the economic mainstream. So that this time next Christmas, some of those parents will be fully supporting of their own families. We learned a couple important lessons when we changed it from Adopt a Family to Pride for Parents. We learned a couple of very important lessons. One is parents would a whole lot rather work to earn, to purchase those toys that they knew would delight their children than they would to stand in free toy lines with their proof of poverty and accept those toys that others were giving to their children. We learned that. We also learned it's a universal truth for all people, of all times, universal truth. It's this: everyone loves to find a bargain. Universal. So my bride, Peggy, was out Christmas shopping this last Christmas season. Grueling day of Christmas shopping. And she came home, lugged in her bags, and spread her treasures out all around the living room for me to admire. And she said, and you know what? She said, I saved more than I spent. Oh, I'm not an economist, so somebody else is going to have to explain the high finances. But this I do know. She was excited about finding bargains. So why do we think it would be such a blessing to the poor to set up a system that deprives them of the joy of finding, selecting, and purchasing those gifts for their own children? That's beginning to catch on, that whole idea of shopping, of bargain hunting. I went into a church between Thanksgiving and Christmas this past year, a large mega church up in Dayton, Ohio. Took up a whole city block, and I was in there to speak on toxic charity. That's always dangerous, but I'm used to it now. I walked in the foyer. The foyer was huge, and there were boxes, plastic boxes, the whole way around that foyer, stacked clear to the ceiling. There's 1,000 of them, and they were all full of toys. And I thought to myself, oh boy, I'm here to talk about toxic charity. And so I said to the pastor, I said, well, looks like you got a lot of folks involved in toy collection. What are you going to do with those toys? Oh, he says, we're going to sell them. I said, you're kidding. He said, yeah, we're partnering up with an inner city ministry. He said, they're setting up a store. We're one of their major suppliers. And he said, they'll be selling those at bargain prices to the poor in their community, and the proceeds are going into starting up a whole new program for employment training in their community. I said, whoa, this is good. I can preach to this crowd. It's catching on all over the country. It's a new day. But I'll tell you, the change is slow. It's because we have so much vested interest in keeping going what is meaningful to us.